The Scott Jennings Show is proudly sponsored by Lear Capital. Since 1997, Lear has helped Americans protect their retirement accounts and savings with physical gold and silver. With thousands of five-star reviews and $3 billion in transactions, Lear is who I trust to help me buy gold and silver. Visit LearScott.com.
The voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
The Department of Homeland Security remains shut down today. Democrats are determined, it seems, to continue the pain at America's airports. A Democratic congresswoman faces a rare ethics committee trial for stealing millions of taxpayer dollars. We have the details on that. Senator John Barrasso joins the show today, as does Senator Roger Marshall, and he's going to talk about Operation Arctic Frost. There was a hearing on Capitol Hill yesterday, and two Democrats, Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, are attempting to shut down AI data centers. We'll have the details on their effort, which is being announced this afternoon. It is Wednesday, March the 25th. This is Common Sense for the American people. I'm Scott Jennings, broadcasting for Salem, and we are live in your nation's capital today. And the city is full of people who cannot get enough of the cherry blossoms, which are, in fact, blooming beautifully as we speak. I still see some puffy white out there, but a lot of pink on the trees during Cherry Blossom Week here in Washington, D.C. If you're out and about, please enjoy, but please be mindful of the traffic laws and don't get yourself run over out there in the streets. A lot of folks in Washington this week. Topping the news today, day 40 of the DHS shutdown, and the deal we thought was emerging to get it funded seems on shaky ground today. We reported to you yesterday that Senate Republicans and President Trump had agreed to a deal where a two-part plan to fund DHS and therefore TSA was taking shape. You do the funding for DHS through normal order, and then you go put the ICE piece through a second reconciliation bill. So you would separate ICE out from DHS funding at large. It would have funded about 254,000 of the 260,000 employees of the agency. Sounded pretty reasonable. This plan would have required 7 Democrats to join 53 Republicans to get the first part moving. And heretofore, Democrats have said they want to fund everything at DHS except for ICE. So Republicans called their bluff and said, fine, let's do it. And now Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are moving the goalposts. They say Democrats will not support that plan. So we are waiting to see what happens today, as Americans are also waiting, and they continue to go to airports and find 3, 4, and 5 hour lines, sometimes more. Did you know, by the way, that this fiscal year, the TSA has been shut down for 50% of the time, 85 days in total? You have to remember, Democrats did a shutdown maneuver back in the fall. And if this shutdown continues until Friday, well, it means TSA agents will have missed a combined $1 billion in paychecks. It's no wonder that nearly 500 agents have left the agency altogether. Democrats are terrorizing them half the time, taking away their paychecks and leaving them and their families in constant limbo. The average TSA agent makes around $50,000 per year, by the way. These are working-class Americans who signed up to serve their government only to be served up themselves as human sacrifices on the liberal political altar. Listen to this TSA worker union representative. She's in Florida, and she's had enough. She told CNN about it today here in cut number 11.
This is unacceptable. These are people who have been put on a position by constituents, and they need to represent us. And that also means making sure we are able to put food on the table while we've been working. It is unacceptable at this point that, you know, we are showing up to work with no pay.
Mad at all. Now, the acting TSA administrator Ha-Wen McNeil testified before Congress this morning on the devastating impact that the Democratic shutdown chaos has inflicted on the rank-and-file workforce. Let's hear that in cut number 13.
We have already lost over 480 TSOs this shutdown, and our call-out rates have accelerated as our workforce was still reeling from the last shutdown. Prior to this shutdown, our TSO call-out rate was 4%. Now, multiple major airports are experiencing days where 40 to 50% of their staff are calling out because they simply cannot afford to report to work. This has led to the highest wait times in TSA history, with some wait times greater than 4.5 hours. We are being forced to consolidate lanes and may have to close smaller airports if we do not have enough officers.
Workers are quitting, wait times are growing, and smaller airports are now at risk of closing. The deliberate strategy to inflict pain on the American people and then blame Trump for it is in full swing. Republicans, understandably, are beside themselves on Capitol Hill. Also this morning, an exasperated House Speaker, Mike Johnson, held a press conference to address the situation, and he made the point, and it is undeniable, that Democrats are doing all of this at the behest of and on behalf of illegal aliens like Jose Medina, who killed 18-year-old Sheridan Gorman in Chicago this weekend. Here's the speaker in cut number 10.
This is not a game, but Democrats have shut down the exact law enforcement agencies that are responsible for apprehending and deporting criminal illegal aliens, just like this criminal here that took Sheridan's life. Congressional Democrats have held our airports, TSA, FEMA, the Coast Guard, so many critical functions of our government. We're talking about anti-bioterrorism matters and issues. You're talking about cybersecurity, all these things. They are holding the government hostage. Why? What is their demand? At the root of all this, they want to reopen the border and they want to protect criminal illegal aliens just like this murderer here. That is the modern Democrat Party.
And one of Speaker Johnson's top lieutenants, Congresswoman Lisa McClain, had this to say in cut number 14.
Sickens me. I'm here to protect Americans, and I'm here to protect law-abiding citizens. And that's what we're going to vote again. We're going to stop playing politics. We're going to put the American people first again. And I will close by saying this. Thank you, President Trump, for doing what the Democrats refuse to do. And thank you for always putting Americans first.
McClain referencing there President Trump sending ICE agents to the airports to help out. By all accounts, these ICE agents have been helpful. Wait times at some airports have been alleviated by their presence, including in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. But has that stopped Democrats from saying deranged things? No, of course not. In fact, the deranged local prosecutor in Philly, a man named Larry Krasner, threatened to throw in jail ICE agents for the crime of, let me check my notes here, helping you get to your flight. Listen to this lunatic in cut number 3.
You commit crimes within the jurisdiction that is the city and county of Philadelphia, I prosecute you. That is how it works. No, I don't take a phone call from the president saying let him go. No, the president cannot pardon you. I'll say it again. The president cannot pardon you. And yes, I will put you in handcuffs and I will put you in a courtroom, and if necessary, I will put you in a jail cell.
So to recap the news here, Republicans are trying to reopen the Department of Homeland Security, which has been closed for the last 40 days. Democrats are refusing to do that, which means we aren't paying the TSA agents who get you through the line at the airport. And Democrats are doing this because, well, they care more about illegal aliens who break into our country and kill us than they do about American citizens being able to travel freely, or American citizens who wind up victims of these illegal aliens who come to our country and sometimes commit very violent crimes. As for the legislative strategy, it appears that Republicans are committed to voting on their plan by tomorrow and giving the Democrats another chance to go on the record and show the American people where they really stand. I suspect that we'll see, once again, that where the Democrats stand is decidedly not with you. It's Scott Jennings here on Salem. You're listening to Common Sense for the American people. A word from our friends at Relief Factor. Now, since discovering Relief Factor last summer, you've heard me talk about it. You've also heard me share stories from people across the country who have found relief to their daily aches and pains through Relief Factor. A lot of them got started, by the way, by doing this. Go and use the 3-week quick start plan. You go to relieffactor.com or you call 1-800-4RELIEF and you simply say, I want to get rid of aches and pains. I want to try the 3-week quick start. It just costs $19.95. You really have nothing to lose, but it might set you on a path to really change your life, to get rid of the aches and pains. And oh, by the way, Relief Factor recently has improved their formula. They've added a premium black pepper extract. It helps your body absorb all the key ingredients even better than before. So my advice, take it from me, take it from the thousands of people we hear from. Try it out, 3-week quick start. Go to relieffactor.com or call 1-800-4RELIEF. I don't think that you will regret it. When we come back, a story about a Florida congresswoman, a Democrat, who is alleged to have stolen $5 million. Crazy story, and we have it next here on The Scott Jennings Show.
Gold and silver recently soared to record highs and then pulled back. So are precious metals still a good buy? Many Wall Street experts predict higher prices ahead. Why? Well, because we still have trillions in national debt, a declining dollar, and inflation that keeps shrinking our savings. Even with corrections along the way, gold remains a historical hedge for wealth protection. That's why Morgan Stanley's chief investment officer ditched the 60-40 stocks and bonds portfolio and is recommending up to 20% in precious metals. They're getting educated, and you should too. Call Lear Capital at 1-800-880-2424 for your free gold investment kit and learn how you could qualify for up to $20,000 in bonus gold. Lear Capital has over $3 billion in transactions and thousands of 5-star reviews. Call 1-800-880-2424, 1-800-880-2424, or visit LearScott.com.
Conversations and stories you simply won't hear from the mainstream media. It's The Scott Jennings Show.
Welcome back to Common Sense for the American People. Scott Jennings is here. By the way, have you heard the one about the sitting Florida congresswoman who stole millions of dollars in FEMA disaster relief funds and then used the money on her campaign for Congress? No, you haven't heard this story? Well, I wonder why that might be, because I'll tell you why. The congresswoman in question is a Democrat, and that tells you everything you need to know about the state of the American media. Now, this is not some minor ethics flap. We're going to tell you all about it. This is not a paperwork error. This is not a technicality here, folks. This is one of the most serious corruption cases involving a sitting member of Congress to come along in years. The congresswoman in question is named Sheila Sherfilis McCormick. She is a Democrat from Florida. She represents parts of Broward and Palm Beach counties. And here is what happened. A grand jury indicted her for allegedly stealing $5 million in FEMA disaster relief funds, money that was supposed to go to help Americans during COVID. According to prosecutors, that money didn't just disappear, it was laundered, funneled through a family business, and then prosecutors say she used the money to fund her own campaign for Congress. Now, why haven't you heard about this again? Yes, forgot. This is a Democrat we're talking about who took disaster relief money and turned it into campaign cash. Now, the charges don't stop there. We're talking about conspiracy here, money laundering, illegal campaign contributions, even allegations of falsifying tax documents. If convicted in federal court, she could face decades in prison. So her federal trial is scheduled for next month. But these issues are going to be dealt with today on Capitol Hill in a rare public ethics trial over in the U.S. House. And when I say rare, I mean rare. The House Ethics Committee almost never does this. And they had to create a special adjudicatory panel because investigators found what they called, quote, substantial evidence of her misconduct. The committee reviewed tens of thousands of documents, interviewed dozens of witnesses, and said the evidence lines up not just with the indictment, which I just told you about, but potentially even broader misconduct. It goes beyond what federal prosecutors have even alleged in court. So let me ask the obvious question. Where is the Democratic Party? Where is the outrage? Where is the moral clarity? Because when Republicans have even a whiff of scandal, what do we hear? Resign, step down, zero tolerance. My goodness gracious, Democrats just the other day were going crazy about Pete Hegseth supposedly buying millions of dollars in lobster, but they have nothing for this? Do you remember the name George Santos? He was the Republican congressman from New York, campaign fraud indictment and later a conviction, and it was Republicans who cleaned up their own house and expelled him from the body. But here with Democrat McCormick, what do we hear from Democratic leaders? Well, we hear nothing. It's total silence. What do we hear from cable news? Nothing. A blackout on this story, it seems. And that is the real story today, not just the alleged corruption, but the complete lack of accountability from the political system that surrounds it. Because this isn't just about a congresswoman who is corrupt. It is about a culture where if you're on the right team and if you vote the right way, well, things tend to just get ignored and overlooked, at least as a matter of public accountability. If these allegations are true, and it certainly seems like the Ethics Committee believes they are, this is one of the most brazen abuses of taxpayer money in recent memory. Stealing from a disaster relief program, a national emergency, and using it to climb the ladder of political power. After this ethics trial, will there be any public exploration of exactly what happened here? We get breathless coverage of everything Trump or any Republican does, real or imagined. But a Democrat stealing $5 million? Well, we've got nothing so far. But maybe, hopefully, that will change after the Ethics Committee does its job today. And we'll see what happens to Representative McCormick of Florida. But as they say, it don't look good. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the news of the day, a little bit more on the war in Iran with Josh Kraushaar. He's one of the smartest political journalists in Washington, D.C. He's also the editor of the Jewish Insider, but he's got always chock full of information. We'll talk to Josh Kraushaar in just a little bit. Also, later on the show today, Senator Barrasso is coming by, Senator Marshall. A lot of stuff going on in D.C., and we've got all the political players to bring you the latest news and analysis. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. Stay with us.
Common sense for the American people. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
And we thank you for listening today here on Wednesday, March 25th. You're listening on the radio. We sincerely appreciate you out there all across this country. If you're watching on snc.tv or checking out the video stream, you might notice I'm wearing my cherry blossom tie today and matching cherry blossom pocket handkerchief. Want to say thanks to my friend Henry at Andrews Ties in Union Station in Washington last night, where I popped in and I said, you know what? I'm going to will spring into existence. I'm going to will it into existence with some sartorial choices. So he comes up with this tie. I wore a salmon jacket on CNN last night. I'm bringing it about, and hopefully it will not go back. We got Josh Kraushaar from Jewish Insider here in just a moment. We're going to kick around the day's news. A lot of stuff going on. We'll get Josh's opinion in a moment. First, I do have a message that every parent and grandparent, for that matter, needs to hear. It comes from our friends and partners at Childhelp, and they want you to know, and this is vital information, your kids are being targeted online. If they're on gaming platforms or social media or messaging apps, chances are they are encountering people who are not who they say they are. You have all these kids in all these apps. They're on there. A lot of screen time for the kids. And sometimes predators slip through the cracks, and it's families that pay the price. Childhelp runs this National Child Abuse Hotline. They hear from kids every single day who were contacted through these games and apps. These kids were groomed, manipulated, and threatened by adults who are pretending to be someone else. One boy, in fact, called Childhelp And he said this adult got in touch with him and was demanding photos of the boy, and he was threatening to lie to his parents if he didn't comply. Now, put yourself in the boy's shoes. You're a young kid. You're playing a game. Somebody is talking to you, and they start saying, send me photos or I'm going to call your parents. I mean, this is frightening stuff, but it happens every single day. But calling up Childhelp and getting help from them probably saved this boy's life. That's why Childhelp matters. I'm a donor. I know the leadership. I've been to the headquarters. I personally vouch for Childhelp, and I'm asking you today for $27, a donation of $27. That's what it takes to do one of these phone calls to the Childhelp hotline. That's it, $27. It's not much to ask, but you could save a life by partnering with Childhelp. That's what I've decided to do. Here's how you do it. Childhelp.org/Scott, or text Childhelp, all together, Childhelp, to 94878 and give $27 today. Joining me now on the show is the editor-in-chief of Jewish Insider. He is here to talk about the war in Iran, plus other news going on in Washington. My friend Josh Kraushaar is here. Josh, welcome back to the Scott Jennings Show. I see you on the monitor here. You're in the Kraushaar patio area, taking advantage of the nice Washington area weather, and you and I are both ready for the beginning of baseball season today. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. It's great to be back on the show. This is the nerve center where it all happens, both at Jewish Insider and Fox News. And we're all the fact that spring is almost here. DC, very unpredictable marches. It comes in like a lion, out like a lamb, but eager for baseball. It's going to be fun tonight.
Absolutely. Same for me, although you and I, Nats and Cardinals, these are our teams. I'm just hoping for the best in the rebuild. For Cardinal Nation, we have just settled on rebuilding for the next couple of years. I don't know what you've settled on with the Nats. I'm not entirely sure what you call this.
You're spoiled. The Cardinals had a couple down years, and now it's, no one's showing up at Busch Stadium. We've had six, since the World Series in 2019, we've had 6 really dismal years, and hopefully we can get off the schneid this campaign with some good young prospects.
Yeah, all right. We'll follow along with baseball beginning this week, Josh. We're also following along other news, and I want to start with the war in Iran. So it seems like, Josh, we've got back and forth going on between Trump and Trump's envoys, and some people in the Iranian government, whatever's left over there. There was some rumor that it was the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament. There's been some news that the White House offered up some peace plan points to Iran. Iran's publicly saying they're rejecting that. There's also other news that there could be talks and negotiations set up for this weekend. What are you hearing on this? What do you expect to come of it over the next few days?
Well, Scott, there appear to be some back-channel negotiations, which are quite significant, and we've learned that there's this 15-point plan that the White House has sent to Iran, and it was rejected by the Iranians. And it frankly looks very similar, Scott, to sort of the conditions that the U.S. was looking at discussing before the war began, namely Iran getting rid of its ballistic missile production, and getting rid of its nuclear enrichment, and stop sponsoring terrorist activities in the region. That's why the war began. Iran rejected those conditions, and we're now at the same moment where Iran's see the devastation of Iran's military infrastructure in the last few weeks. There's a I know Israel is kind of, they budgeted, I think, around 8 weeks maybe of enough wartime to really degrade significantly that infrastructure, the military infrastructure Iran has. But look, I think Trump is giving the Iranian regime an out, but it would impose very severe conditions if there was some kind of ceasefire or some kind of deal struck. So I remember that we've had these conversations and back channel diplomacy before the war began. It didn't really lead anywhere. I'm not very optimistic it's going to lead anywhere at this point, but there are domestic political pressures that the White House is facing, namely the rise in gas prices. And it's something that Trump has never backed away from the possibility of making a deal, and he's still looking to do so with the Iranian regime down on its heels.
The red line for Trump has been and remains, first and foremost, the nuclear weapons piece. I mean, this is what triggered this war in the first place. Witkoff and Kushner go to talk to the Iranians. They say, well, we got enough enriched uranium here to make 11 nuclear bombs. They tell Trump, and all of a sudden we're at war with Iran. That's still got to be the red line, right? I mean, my view is you can't exit this without being able to tell the American people we went and we met the principal objective, which is to stop these Iranians from ever having the possibility of building a nuclear weapon. You agree with that?
That's right. I think there are two essential conditions on the U.S. side, certainly, for this war to end with a victory, which is number one, there's been discussion about sending some kind of special forces unit to secure the nuclear material that Iran still has under their control, and that would, I think, be a complicated operation. It's been talked about. We've seen some reporting in the press, but that is one idea being floated about to ensure that Iran doesn't have the same nuclear capabilities that they did before the war. The other big issue I think that Trump is going to need to resolve before he can actually declare a win for the United States and our allies is clearing and opening up the Strait of Hormuz once again. And I think that might be a little more complicated than he initially bargained for. It may actually take more military assets into the region to lead a coalition to clear up the shipping lanes. But that's something that Iran has been playing an asymmetrical game. They don't have the military strength, but they do have the ability to really make things dicey for the U.S. and its allies. And I think that's one of the conditions that Trump is going to need to resolve before declaring victory.
Josh Kraushaar is our guest. He's the editor of Jewish Insider. Josh, talk to us about the Israeli perspective right now, because I think, for them, this is the end of October the 7th. I mean, part of the reason they're going after Iran is because Iran funded, planned, and stands up all these proxies that ultimately led to what happened on October the 7th. But long term, I think a lot of Americans wonder, okay, well, what are we going to be doing here over time, even after the military operations basically come to an end? What kind of monitoring is going to be required? What kind of international coalition, say, would be needed to keep the Strait of Hormuz open? And for Israel, talk to us about their perspective on, what will be eternal vigilance, I assume, on monitoring Iran so that they never are able to build up the kind of terror network that led to what happened on October the 7th.
Yeah, I mean, Scott, if you live in Israel right now, you're going to bomb shelters, at least several times a day because of the missile barrage that Iran is throwing against both Israel and a lot of the other U.S. allies in the region. So you have the reality of being in wartime, and you also have the reality that most Israelis, an overwhelming number of Israelis, support the war because they know how significant a threat Iran poses to the day-to-day livelihoods of Israelis. They lived through October 7th. They know that Iran is the head of the snake, but there were so many proxies like Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis that have been part of that Iranian kind of coalition, if you will, and they're in it for the long haul. I think the Israelis have said, at least according to public reporting, that they think that they can kind of significantly degrade Iran's military capabilities in about 8 weeks, and I think that's the time frame that psychologically Israelis are kind of budgeting for this war to last. Now there are certainly political pressures at home that President Trump is dealing with, but I think that the other difference, I think, from the Israeli perspective, is they really would love and are committed to seeing this regime of the Ayatollahs literally, taken out and thrown to the dustbin of history. That is a focus of theirs. I don't think I think the military successes in the first month of the campaign have been quite significant. Though I also think that the IRGC and a lot of the remnants of the Revolutionary Guard are still very much entrenched, and the notion of regime change may look a little more distant than it did. And Israelis are willing to see this through to actually have a less threatening regime in Iran by whatever means possible.
That voice you're hearing, Josh Kraushaar. You see him on Fox News, hear him on Fox News Radio, and also he is the editor of Jewish Insider, one of the most experienced political journalists in Washington, D.C. Josh, shifting gears just for a moment. We've got a minute and a half left here or so. How is this shutdown going to end? We've been reporting all week on the efforts to get a deal to end the DHS shutdown. Seemed like maybe there was movement for a deal over the last couple of days. That feels like it might be falling apart today. Senator Moreno of Ohio tells me they're going to vote on it Thursday, one way or the other. What do you think Democrats are going to do here? And politically, who's winning and losing on the shutdown?
Well, maybe I'm old school, Scott, but the notion that we're in a war and we have a very heightened level of potential Iranian-backed threats to the homeland, and we don't have DHS funded is a scandal to me. Like there's actually the outlines of a deal, and I think Republicans are willing to fund DHS. carve out, according to all the comments being made by Republican leaders, I think they're willing to kind of leave out the ICE funding. And by the way, the reconciliation bill very much allocated plenty of money for ICE. So I don't think that's as much of a concern, at least for the time being, for Republicans. And yet you still have Democrats looking to hold out and trying to get more restrictions and regulations as part of any compromise. Look, it's just, you obviously the political pressure with the lines at some of the airports. That's a political problem. But I'm stunned that there's not more political pressure. We're at war. We're facing a significant level of threats to the homeland, and we're content. And no, there's been no impetus for Democrats to step up and at least during this very fraught period to make sure the Homeland Security Department is fully funded. If God forbid, if something happens, there's gonna be a lot of people regretting not acting sooner.
Josh Kraushaar, Jewish Insider. You see him on Fox News. Thanks for joining us. We'll have you back soon. Appreciate you, brother.
Thanks, Scott.
A word from our friends at Patriot Mobile. Most wireless companies don't care who you are or what you believe. They just want your money. But our friends at Patriot Mobile are different, and for more than 12 years, they have stood with Americans who believe that freedom is worth defending, and they've been funding the Christian conservative movement while others stay silent. That's why I love Patriot Mobile. It's why I do business with Patriot Mobile. It's why I'm asking you to do the same. I would encourage you to go to patriotmobile.com/Scott or call 972-PATRIOT. You'll get the same or even better service than you're getting right now. You're going to get a free month if you use promo code Scott. You can keep your number, keep your phone, upgrade your phone. All the options are yours. Do business with a company that believes in what you believe in. Patriot Mobile. That's our wireless provider here at the Scott Jennings Show. More news when we come back. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. Stay with us.
Now, for America's favorite pundit, it's Scott Jennings.
And it is Wednesday, March 25th. We are currently watching some video here of White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. She has taken the podium in the last few minutes, and she did announce, by the way, that President Trump's long-awaited meeting with President Xi of China will now take place in Beijing on May 14th and May the 15th. So that was a little bit of news. The First Lady will host President Xi and his wife for a reciprocal visit in Washington, D.C. at a date to be announced later this year. So diplomacy with the Chinese will commence in Beijing on May 14th and May 15th. On the Senate floor, also looking at video right now of the Senate Majority Leader, John Thune. So he's been having some back and forth with the Democrats in the Senate over how to get the Department of Homeland Security funded. Republicans made an offer, which was, for Democratic purposes, very simple. Let's fund everything at DHS except for ICE, and that would include TSA. The Democrats have responded with a counteroffer, and Thune is now on the floor telling us that it is the same as their past offers. He's bashing this. He says there's, quote, no point to Republicans sending another counteroffer. Here's a quote from Senator Thune. They're asking for things that have already been turned down, so it just seems like they're going in circles. And Thune is saying that warrants and mask demands have never been on the table for Republicans, and that Democrats know that. So what's going to happen on the floor of the Senate tomorrow is that Republicans are going to put up their plan, which would fund all of the Department of Homeland Security except for ICE. So that would be about 256,000 of the 260,000 employees. They're going to put that on the floor tomorrow and see what happens. Republicans, I think, are going to vote for it. Democrats are going to vote against it. And we're in day 40 of this crazy shutdown. Last night, I was on CNN and wanted to bring a little audio to you from my latest debate. I don't think I've debated her before, but former Congresswoman Val Demings of Florida, you might remember her if you're down in the Sunshine State. She came by for a debate. Sadly, she wasn't prepared for it, but we'll listen to it nonetheless. Here's cut 16.
And so the American people, nor the troops on the ground, have a clue what the president's mission is, what the way out is. 13 people, U.S. soldiers, have already died. We need a clear mission.
Okay, respectfully, may I ask you a question? Do you believe that Iran has been the world's largest state sponsor of terror for the last nearly 5 decades?
The president is the one, Scott, who said 9 months ago
I'm asking you.
that he
I'm asking you
obliterated any capability that they had.
You either do or you don't.
So what is the mission now?
I'm asking you. I would like to engage in a debate.
I think the president.
I'd like to ask you. We're having a debate, so I'm asking you a question. Do you believe Iran is a state supporter?
An explanation for why it's okay to send our sons and daughters into a war, where 13 people have died. You're sending additional ones.
Nobody's yelling right now.
Because you're not prepared for this debate. Let me tell you what the objectives are. Number one, they are the world's largest state supporter and exporter of terrorism. Number two, they have a ballistic missile program, which we found out this past weekend can reach most of Europe. Number three, they lie about their nuclear.
At the table?
They lied about
Is
their.
Europe at the table?
That discovery.
Why was Europe included? Why weren't our allies included?
I see now why you don't know the objectives, because you don't stop talking long enough to listen. Number three, they have a navy. They have a navy that harasses ships.
In the beginning, in the discussion, in the strategic plan,
in the operational plan, to 60%.
Why weren't they included?
Nobody else does that.
Do you listen to what I have to put up with night after night? I mean, it's really unbelievable. Do you hear this? There is no reasonable conversation. There is no debate. You have people who have august titles like congressperson, or in her case, I think sheriff or chief of police or whatever she was in Orlando. And they show up, and these are serious issues. Going to war is a serious issue. But there is no active listening. This is probably the thing that would shock you the most about what happens on cable television. There is literally no active listening. Did you hear any listening there? This poor lady, Val Demings, she can't listen because it's difficult to listen if you just keep talking the entire time. And the reason they keep talking the entire time is because they know that if they permit me or a Republican or a conservative to talk, they're not going to be able to answer the questions. So they want to come out with the talking points. There's no mission. We have no idea what we're doing. You lay it out, but they know if you're allowed to lay it out, they're going to sound stupid. So the only alternative is, I'm just going to keep talking and keep shouting and keep saying President Trump over and over again and putting my fingers in my ears, and we'll see what happens. Sort of mind-numbing, honestly. But I think we made the points, and hopefully the American people are getting it. Hour number 2 is next. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. Stay with us. It is Wednesday, March 25th. Thanks for joining us here on the Scott Jennings Show, Common Sense for the American People. Normally, I'd give you a quick check of the headlines, but I think I'm going to start this hour with the breaking news out of Washington, D.C. It appears that in the United States Senate, the deal to possibly get the Department of Homeland Security funded is crumbling. We've had Senator Thune, the Republican leader, on the floor in just the last few minutes talking about the back and forth we're having with Democrats here, and it just doesn't sound like it's going well at all. Democrats moving the goalposts on what they want to get DHS funded. In order to illuminate this situation, I do have on the phone a member of Senate Republican leadership, John Barrasso. Senator Barrasso is on the line. He is just steps off the Senate floor, and he joins us live. Senator Barrasso, thank you for your time. I know you all are in the middle of it there in the United States Senate, but tell us what's going on. It sounds like from Senator Thune's remarks, the Democrats here want to keep this shutdown going. Is that your understanding?
It sure seems that way to me, Scott. It's great to be with you. You know, you have lots of fans here on the Republican side of the aisle in the Senate, and what we're proposing is something that the president agrees we need to do, which is open up all of government, all of the Department of Homeland Security. There's parts of it that we pre-funded last year in what the president calls the one big beautiful bill. It's our working families tax cut law. So we pre-funded the specific ICE things because we knew the Democrats were not going to be for that. So we need to get the government open in the standpoint of the Department of Homeland Security, which is this comprehensive department set up after 9/11 when we were under attack, and it's to protect our airports, our borders. It's to attack against cyber attacks, all of those various things. And the Democrats have been against it because, as Senator Chris Murphy, who's from Connecticut, very liberal, has said, and the video's around there. I can send you a copy of this. He says the people we care about most, undocumented migrants. The Democrats would rather stand with illegal immigrant criminals than with the safety and security of the American people, and that's regrettably where they're making their stand. We had agreement 2 days ago. Chuck Schumer agreed to the sorts of things we needed to do to open the government. And he must have gotten an earful from some of his conference, because now he has moved the goalposts significantly, walked back what he had agreed to before. But we're going to have a vote later today in the Senate on what he had agreed to before and put them all on the record.
That is Senator John Barrasso from Wyoming. He is number 2 in the Senate Republican leadership, and he speaks to us now live, just steps off the Senate floor. We're talking about, are we going to be able to get DHS funded, and that includes TSA. Senator, it is incredible to me that these Democrats are willing to inflict this much pain on the American people. We're seeing 3, 4, 5-hour lines at airports around the country, and as you just pointed out, they have absolutely moved the goalposts. They said they wanted to fund everything, including TSA, but ICE. You said, fine, let's do it. And now they're saying, whoa, whoa, whoa. You called their bluff, and now they're running away from a deal. It just feels like we're nowhere near the end of this, and we're in spring break season. Just a message for the American people here. If you're standing in line, Senator, in your opinion, who is causing the misery?
Well, it's the Democrats. They don't seem to care. One of the Democrat House members say, well, we're going to cause pain. Another one of the Democrats in the Senate said he felt serene with the position that they've taken. This is obscene. It's not serene. It's terrible to the people in line. And it's not just the people in line. The TSA agents who are showing up, and we know that many of them aren't coming to work or they're calling in sick. Well, it's not because they're sick. Some of them are trying to actually go make money as Uber drivers or doing other sort of things like that to earn money. There was a story about some of them going to sell plasma to earn money. My Rotary Club in Casper, Wyoming, put out an email this morning. It said currently there are 40 TSA employees in Casper who are not being paid. Well, they haven't been paid since this whole Democrat shutdown. It says the airport is collecting food and other supplies, dog food, cat food, toilet paper. The employees can't accept cash or cash equivalent cards like Visa gift cards. However, they can accept gas cards and gift cards to places like Walmart or Target, which give them the flexibility to purchase what they truly need. So once again, the American people, big-hearted people, are coming to the aid of the TSA agents, but people have been standing in line for hours to get through the security lines. And this is all on the Democrats who refuse to fund the Department of Homeland Security, which is set up to keep us safe after 9/11. The Democrats continue to stand up for illegal immigrant criminals more than the safety and security of the American people.
Senator, I heard an incredible statistic today, and that is that in this fiscal year, the TSA has been shut down and the DHS has been shut down for 50% of the days in this fiscal year. How in the world can you expect to run a national transportation system? How in the world can you keep us safe from terrorism if, and this is Democrat shutdowns, if you're willing to keep this stuff closed half the time? I mean, that ought to be alarming to the American people that this critical agency is open literally half the time because of Democrats. It's nuts.
Yeah, and Republicans have continued to bring forth legislation called the Shutdown Fairness Act and prevent shutdowns, those sorts of things. Democrats block them. The Democrats love to shut down the government because they hate President Trump. You know, there's this really great book out there for your listeners. If they haven't read it, they should. It's called A Revolution of Common Sense. A guy named Scott Jennings wrote it. It is full of common sense items, and it seems that every time the president comes up with some 80% positive common sense idea, the Democrats, these knee-jerk liberals, they seem to have to oppose it just because the president has supported it. I mean, this is where we are today because they hate the president so much they'd rather hurt the American people than help the country move forward.
Senator, we're all focused on what's happening at the airports, but as you pointed out, the Department of Homeland Security deals with a lot of things, and we are at war with Iran right now, and we have had numerous instances of radical Islamic domestic terrorism here in the United States. How worried should people be that DHS is closed right now at a time when we are seeing heightened threats from radical Islamic terrorists in our own country?
Yeah, well, we're certainly on red alert, and the security agencies will tell you that. You know, we still don't know who are going to be radicalized as terrorists, who are here as sleeper cells, and then what organized from Iran cyber attacks can come. And you may have seen there's a cyber attack against a medical firm, a nationwide firm, that successfully got through, and it shut down their operations. So Iran is continuing, in spite of this significant and successful bombings, they still have the capacity to try the cyber attacks. That's all coming at us. And we do have in the Department of Homeland Security, now shut down by the Democrats, a cyber component to that that does cyber security. And I think over half of them are on furlough. So they're not getting paid, they're not working, and we are at definite risk at home from terrorism abroad as well as at home.
Senator, last question for you. Obviously, Schumer has made his position clear. He doesn't want to fund the Department of Homeland Security. I have a hard time believing that there aren't at least a few Democrats in his conference who are looking at this airport situation back in their home states and gritting their teeth. There seems to be one reasonable person, John Fetterman. Is it possible that Schumer could face a jailbreak from inside of his own conference, people who just can't stand the idea that the Democratic Party has become known for one thing and one thing only, and that's inflicting pain on the American people, all to support and coddle and keep here illegal aliens? I mean, that's what their brand is. That's the Schumer brand right now. Are Democrats really willing to live with this?
Well, we're going to find out when we call the vote later today to see how many stand up for the American people and how many just follow Chuck over the liberal cliff. You know, there's an effort called Chuck to get rid of Chuck Schumer that the liberal base of the Democrat Party are doing. These are the folks that, you know, elected Mondami in New York as the mayor. So that is where the energy and the action is in the Democrat Party. And Chuck is trying to follow them because they're the ones that are leading them, and there's no way to satisfy that group. They hate President Trump so much that there is no satisfying them. They're reflexively anti-Trump. No matter what President Trump says, good, bad, or indifference, they are after and against President Trump. And you know who they are. I mean, these are the elitists, the coastal elites, the people in California, New York City, the Boston, those folks. And they're the people in the sanctuary states. And that's what the fight is about right now across the country. And we need to continue to stand up for common sense principles that the American people voted for in 2024 when we return President Trump to the White House.
Senator Barrasso from Wyoming, you're number 2 in command there in the Republican conference. Thanks for stepping off the Senate floor to update us on this evolving and disappointing situation. We'll talk to you again soon, and appreciate you reading the book. A lot of people did, and I'm glad you're one of them because you're one of our favorites there in the United States Senate.
You asked the question in the book, does it make America safer? Does it make America stronger? Does it make America more prosperous? And that's what I'm working for every day.
We know you are, sir. Thanks for the time today, and we'll see what happens this afternoon. The breaking news from Senator Barrasso is, even though Democrats are balking, the Republicans are still going to put up on the floor this afternoon a funding bill to get DHS and TSA, that means the airports, open and functional again. Will Democrats go to the floor and vote it down? It sounds like yes, but they're going to get a chance to see, and you'll get a chance to see. Do they stand with the American people, or do they stand with the illegals? We'll find out this afternoon. More to come on The Scott Jennings Show after this.
Fighting the left with the best weapon we have, common sense. This is The Scott Jennings Show.
Here on Wednesday, March 25th, we're tracking the breaking news in Washington. It seems like things are falling apart over in the Senate to get the Department of Homeland Security funded. Democrats are balking at the latest Republican effort to get this agency open, to get the airports running properly. There is, we just learned here on the Scott Jennings Show from Senator Barrasso, there is going to be a vote on the Senate floor this afternoon. We're expecting Democrats to vote against it, as they have been for the last 40 days. And the White House Press Secretary, Caroline Leavitt, is briefing the media as we speak. We have a bite from Caroline here. Let's listen to Cut 27.
It's the Democrats who have led to this stalemate over the past 6 weeks. The president and the Republicans' position has been very clear. Fund the Department of Homeland Security.
To comment on all of this is the vice chairman of the House Republican Conference. He represents Utah's 1st Congressional District. Congressman Blake Moore is joining us for his inaugural appearance on the Scott Jennings Show. Congressman Moore, thanks for your time today. You're hearing the breaking news at the same time we are. Obviously, the House Republicans have voted to fund the Department of Homeland Security, but when you see the Democrats' posture in the Senate, and it seems like we're back at square one here, what's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I think it's completely nonsensical at this point. I think where we were maybe 6 weeks ago with everything going on in Minnesota, and what happened since then? President Trump brought in Tom Homan, a consummate professional, someone who understands this, has worked for multiple administrations, Republican and Democrat, brought that temperature down. There's a change at the secretary level. And that can't even be enough for Democrats to go, okay, yeah, this is good. This is good. We're moving in the right direction. And, there's a give and take that has to happen in the Senate to get to a point where they fund it. And so it's just nonsensical. The Democrats have supported this level of funding over and over again, have blasted Republicans for not being willing and calling it dangerous to go into these shutdowns. We got TSA officers. These folks haven't been paid 3 times over the last 6 months in long period stretches for just showing up to work. It's ridiculous.
Congressman, you're from Utah. What are you hearing from your people back home at the Salt Lake Airport? We're seeing long lines at airports across the country. How are they handling it back in Salt Lake City?
Well, I'll tell you, Salt Lake, Utah in general, we typically run things pretty well. They're going through some pain right now. There's extra support for our TSA agents based at the airport, food services, things like that, to help out, at least alleviate some of the burden. So Utah does things really well in times like this. We have national parks. When Democrats shut down everything last fall, like, our state steps in and we try to keep things running. We can't do it forever, but we do a good job of covering it. So there's not those pain points. But when I go through security, and I've been through security probably 8 times during this last month and a half, I look at these folks and I'm like, thank you. Thanks for being here. This makes absolutely no more sense. And the fact that you have nothing to do with any of these partisan fights that are going on that Schumer's trying to lead, it's like they can't take yes for an answer. They're, the rhetoric, everything in Minneapolis they've toned things down. They're addressing things. The Trump administration is securing the border. They are trying to make sure that violent crimes being committed by illegal immigrants, those are the ones that are the priority on the deportation. And trying to navigate the rest of this, and immigration policy is incredibly difficult, and the Trump administration is navigating it the very best they can. We're just saying, let's fund that last portion. This is the 12th of 12 bills, and Democrats are just going to hang on to it for another political reason. And it's those TSA agents that are showing up every day without any pay that are bearing the brunt of it.
Yeah, Congressman, it seems to me this entire thing is about immigration. And the Democratic Party has been taken over by people who simply don't want to enforce any immigration laws at all. Even when you have stories going on like this terrible murder in Chicago, Sheridan Gorman, 18-year-old college freshman murdered by a Venezuelan illegal alien in the country illegally for a few years in a sanctuary city, kills an American citizen, 18-year-old girl, entire life ahead of her. Even stories like that seem not to shake the resolve of the Democratic Party to fully stand up for their number one constituency, which is illegal aliens right now. I'll give you the last word on this. I got 20 seconds. Is there anything that can be done from your perspective over in the House, or are you guys just sort of at the mercy of the Senate right now?
And it's so wild to me, because 14 months ago, the very first bill that President Trump signed when he came into office was the Laken Riley Act. And it was because Democrats actually supported it. There were enough Democrats. There wasn't full support by any means, but there were enough Democrats to come on board and say, hey, this is wrong. So the scenario, the tragic event that you just mentioned, there's going to be more of that nonsense going on. And we had support 14 months ago to do this. And right now they're just sticking together, even though there's good changes that are going on. We're navigating this really well. It's ridiculous.
Congressman Blakemore from Utah, thanks for your time. We'll have you back soon. We know you're watching and waiting like the rest of us over in the U.S. House. We'll take a break. When we come back, Kansas Senator Roger Marshall is here. Operation Arctic Frost was up yesterday. We'll learn about that.
Fighting for free speech and Western civilization. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
And you're listening to Common Sense for the American People here on Wednesday, March 25th. Not a lot of common sense, however, happening in the United States Senate right now. We broke some news here at the top of this hour from Senator Barrasso of Wyoming, who tells us that Democrats have blown up, it sounds like, the talks with Republicans about getting the Department of Homeland Security funded. And the Republicans are sort of back at square one here, although they do have their deal that they got President Trump to agree to, which would essentially fund everything except for ICE. And then they would do ICE and Save America in a separate reconciliation package. But I guess the news here is the Republicans are going to put this on the floor this afternoon. There will be a vote. Find out where your senator votes on this. If you live near an airport, if you're at an airport, if you're using airports, if you're worried about terrorism, if you think the Coast Guard should be funded, watch this vote this afternoon. This bill they're going to vote on funds everything at the Department of Homeland Security except for ICE. So this is TSA, Coast Guard, FEMA, all of it. All would be funded. This is what Democrats said they wanted. Now they're saying they don't want that. They want something else. And we're going to find out who stands where. We have Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas joining us in just a second. We're going to talk about something else happening in the Senate, a big hearing yesterday. Let me put in a quick word, though, for our friends at Relief Factor. We're going to have to send some Relief Factor up to Senator Thune's office. He's suffering from the aches and pains of having to deal with Chuck Schumer. If he did take Relief Factor, he would find out that they have added a premium black pepper extract to the formula, which would help his body absorb the key ingredients even better. It would help alleviate the aches and pains of having to deal with these Schumer-led Democrats in the Senate. Listen, here's the real talk. I've used it. People in my family have used it. Thousands of people around the country have used it. We get cards, we get letters, we get calls. They all say the same thing. I didn't know what to do. I tried Relief Factor, and voila, things are getting better. For me, I can get back to regular life. There's a really simple way to try this. It's called the 3-week quick start. It costs $19.95. You get nothing to lose here. ReliefFactor.com or call 1-800-4RELIEF. Try it for 3 weeks. And if you feel better, keep going. I think you would not regret the decision. All right, joining us now, Kansas Senator Roger Marshall is here. Now, Senator, I had you on, and I want to talk about Arctic frost because you guys had a big hearing yesterday about this, and obviously we continue to uncover all the malfeasance, I think, in the Biden-era Department of Justice and the spying and the harassment that went on of Republicans. Before we do that, I just wanted to get your quick comment on the breaking news, Democrats blowing up the funding here for DHS yet again. How does this strike you, and how does it strike the people back in Kansas? Democrats simply keeping this agency shut down for weeks at a time, putting us all at risk. What do you think?
Yeah, Scott. Well, I would take a double dose of Relief Factor right now. I really would. It's pretty much paralyzed the whole country. I mean, we're not able to work on anything else because of this. The TSA situations, the agents themselves, the officers themselves, their families are at the end of their ropes. And of course, our constituents out there in 4-hour lines, that just doesn't work. Scott, when things don't make sense to me, I mean, I can't explain why the Democrats said, we'll fund everything but ICE. We said, great. They're like the dog that caught the car. And now they're going to say no. So it's political, right? It's a political reason they're not wanting to do this. They like the issue. They like the DHS being shut down. They like the issues at the airport. The legacy media is covering for them right now, blaming Republicans for it. But we voted 5 times to fund it. We're going to vote a 6th time this afternoon, take out the ICE funding that they wanted. And still they won't take yes for an answer. So frustrated would be an understatement.
Okay, this is Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas reacting to the breaking news that Democrats have blown up the negotiations over getting Department of Homeland Security back in functioning. I heard the craziest stat today that in this fiscal year, 50% of the time, this fiscal year, DHS has been shut down because of Democratic shutdown. I mean, think about that. Half the time, if you're a TSA agent, half the time you've spent being asked to come to work and not get paid. It's outrageous. And these people make $50,000 a year. It's nuts.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of them have quit. A lot of them are looking for other jobs. They found another job. It'll take months to recover from this. But again, why? It's the why of this. The Democrats want the issue. They waited 30 days for DHS to be shut down before they even were willing to sit down and talk to us. And then on the floor, on the Senate floor over the weekend, they said, well, we'll fund everything but ICE. And so great, we've got the bill together. We've worked it out with the president. We're going to go back and fund ICE. We've already funded it. We have 2 years of more funding already because of our working family tax cuts bill. And we'll go back and do a reconciliation bill with Republican votes only to fund ICE for the next 10 years. But now they're backing out of this, and it'll be interesting to see where they go.
All right, Roger Marshall of Kansas, U.S. Senator, is our guest. I want to talk about something that happened yesterday in the Senate. And we've covered this a little bit, but it's been a few months, and I'm glad you all revisited it. And it's this issue of Operation Arctic Frost. And for our listeners' sake, why don't you give us 30 seconds on this? This was what was going on when Biden was in to sort of harass and spy on Republicans. But give us the 30-second synopsis of Operation Arctic Frost, what you've uncovered, and what we talked about in the hearing that happened in the Senate yesterday.
Yeah, so our Arctic Frost is a weaponization of the government by the Biden administration in 2022. This was the Attorney General. This was the head of the FBI. They appointed a special counsel, Jack Smith. They actually worked with the post office. They worked with the National Archives and, of course, our telecommunications company. We found out yesterday that they bugged Susie Wiles' phone call, a privileged phone call with her lawyer. We found out that a fifth of Republican senators had their phone records retrieved and looked at as well. Again, Scott, I just think it's Chuck Grassley called it worse than Watergate, and I can't disagree with him. Watergate was kind of a bottom up crime, and this is from the very top multi-agency crime of our constitutional rights is what occurred here. The total weaponization of the government.
So what happens next? I mean, obviously Jack Smith was involved in this, other Biden administration people. I guess for, I'm I'm not a lawyer, but for the average person sitting out there who's like, okay, well, they weaponized the government. They did all these terrible things. We've uncovered it. Thank goodness. The investigation is good. What do you do now? I mean, do people just get away with this? And then when Democrats take over, the same people come back? Or how do you punish them, and how do you keep them from doing it again?
Well, I think number one, of course, is just full transparency. I think we need to look at every document, every subpoena, every internal memo that was going on, and make sure the American people know exactly what happened. And then the accountability. I think FBI Director Patel has already started that accountability process. He disbanded the unit that was in charge of this, but we need to go through the cover-up. Right, and figure out who ordered it, how high did it go? Think back again to Watergate. That's something I lived through, and I think. But will the national media cover this story and expose this weaponization of government? Scott, one of the things I talk about a lot is projection. What the Democrats accuse Donald Trump of is what they're doing. They said Donald Trump weaponized government. Well, here's a clear example. Them weaponizing government, they'll say that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. Well, they're the threat to democracy. But it's real hard to throw anybody in jail over this. And that's what people back home would love to see is how do we throw people in jail? And I don't think we ever get to that point. Again, I'm the country doctor. I'm not a lawyer, but I don't know how we throw anybody in jail over this.
Well, we'll keep watching. I do agree with you. Transparency here is key because the people who did this, if you don't have transparency, they'll think they can come back and do it again. So maybe at a minimum, shining a bright light on all these bad actors will prevent them from being able to come back and do it again. I want to get one more topic in here, Senator, and that is the topic of Operation Epic Fury, our war against Iran. Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, was at the podium just a little while ago. I want to hear from her and get your reaction. Here's Leavitt, cut 25.
There does not need to be any more death and destruction. But if Iran fails to accept the reality of the current moment, if they fail to understand that they have been defeated militarily and will continue to be, President Trump will ensure they are hit harder than they have ever been hit before.
Senator Marshall, where do you think we are in this? I've heard Speaker Johnson say he thinks we've basically met our objectives here. The president says we've won, and I think that's indisputable. We have defeated their military. There's talks that maybe there's some diplomacy going on behind the scenes. What's your gut tell you where we are in the lifespan of this military operation?
Well, I think we're 90% there, Scott. I think that we've accomplished 90% of what we set out to do. Remember, the president very clearly, don't let the legacy media fool you. The president very clearly said four objectives: destroy their missiles, their nukes, their Navy, as well as their ability to fund and arm terrorists in the future. So I think we're very much at 90% of those. But the last 10% may be harder than the first 90%. I feel like, look, regardless of how you felt about getting here, we need to keep our foot on their neck and finish the job. They are a wounded animal. They're going to do crazy things as well. I don't want boots on the ground. I don't know if you know much of my bio, Scott, but I served in the military. My dad, my brother served. My son is serving, and I hate war. I hate war. President Eisenhower said as only a soldier who lived it can, with all its brutality and futility. So I want this war to come to a very quick conclusion, but I also want to make sure that my family and future generations of Americans are safe as well. And I don't think we're there yet. Until if they have a regime change this week, then I think that we're getting closer to it. But we need to put the pressure on them, and maybe that's not what America wants to hear. I don't want boots on the ground. We need to keep the pressure on them until they give up. And right now, I think they're just lying to us. I think that's all that's going on.
Well, I agree with you on that. This regime and the people who are left there, I mean, they're known liars. Back in February, they were telling us they had no missiles that could go very far. We found out this weekend, no, they have missiles that can go at least 4,000 kilometers. They could reach most of Europe for that and, throw a nuclear warhead on there. And all of a sudden, you can see why the president was right in saying, in fact, this regime is and was an imminent threat to Western civilization. Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas, thanks for your time today. I know you got to get off to the Senate floor because this Homeland Security vote is pretty soon. We wish you luck with that, and we'll have you back soon. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Scott. Have a great day.
All right, Roger Marshall of Kansas stopping by to give us his perspective. I do want to put in a word for our friends at the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. We were just talking about the war in the Middle East. It's called Operation Epic Fury, Operation Roaring Lion in Israel, and because of it, the red alert sirens continue to fill the air in the Holy Land. They go off, and these folks that live in Israel have about 15 seconds to make it to a bomb shelter. It's times like these that the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews is on the ground, and they are preparing large-scale distributions of life-saving food and first aid and emergency essentials for the most vulnerable population in Israel. We're talking about the sick, the elderly, children, and families. They depend on the fellowship, especially now. And the people of the Holy Land depend on your prayerful support. So I'm asking you to join Christians and Jews around the world in praying for the protection of Israel, her people, and also for the brave American and Israeli troops who are putting their lives on the line in this fight for freedom and in this fight, this righteous fight, to defeat the Iranian terror regime. Stand with Israel today. Visit supportifcj.org, supportifcj.org. When we come back, let's talk AI data centers. Interesting developments today, right after this.
Straight talk without the bluster. When you positively need the truth, this is where you come. The Scott Jennings Show.
All right, breaking news to round out the Scott Jennings Show today. Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in a couple of hours will announce legislation that will pause all new data center construction nationwide until they get certain AI safeguards. This matters because Sanders and AOC are really putting forward what I think is one of the most aggressive positions on AI and data centers and the surrounding issues. A lot of people are saying what they are doing is a gift to China. Not surprising, coming from the socialist wing of the Democratic Party, I suppose. Joining us to discuss this breaking news is the executive director of Build American AI. His name is Nathan Lemur. We're going to talk about this possible legislation that's coming out. Nathan, thanks for joining us here on the Scott Jennings Show. You're part of an organization that is working to educate the American people about why it's important to win the race against China to build AI infrastructure. Now you have Sanders and AOC trying to put a stop to it. When you heard this today, what was your reaction?
It's ludicrous, and it's, typical, type of overreaction from members like Senator Sanders and AOC. The reality is data centers are an important part of increasing capacity so that we can have more Americans participate in the digital economy. That's better schooling, that's better jobs, that's better opportunity. And when you cut their ability to build new data centers, it hinders the ability of local communities to participate in this burgeoning economy.
So based on your knowledge of what they're doing and sort of the political environment in Washington, D.C., are they out on a limb on this thing, or do you think they're going to get support from other members to try to move this moratorium forward?
I think there's a handful of activists who have generated some engagement among certain progressive members of Congress, but I think they're in the minority. The reality is, in communities like Loudoun County, we've seen taxes go down because of it. It's actually covering the taxes for regular Americans. We're seeing jobs start up. We're seeing construction opportunities, trade skills, all kind of flourishing around the country. And when that goes away, you're hindering the ability of people to participate and engage and grow and build, which is what we need to do to compete with China, as well as to build up our own future AI ecosystem.
We've had some political leaders, Nathan, on the Scott Jennings show who have really touted their efforts to recruit these data centers. The governor of West Virginia the other day, he was really proud of it. And then we've had some other stories on the show where we've seen local people who have just said, I don't want this in my backyard. I guess a question I have is, has the political class that I think supports and inherently understands the importance of this, have they done a good enough job so far educating their constituents and the public about why this is good, why ultimately we need to do this, how it can be helpful? Or I guess, is there more communications and PR required here? I feel sometimes like there's a little bit of a disconnect between the politicians who are in on it and they think it's great, and the people on the ground who are going to have these things in their counties and communities.
I think that is an important point. It's important to cut through the noise and explain, separate fact from fiction. And the reality is these data centers are the tip of the iceberg when it comes to opportunity. It's not just the construction jobs. It's not just the tradesmen. It's not the guys who just build them. It's actually also the other community, other jobs that come around of it, because of it's basically a factory coming to your town, and it's creating more capacity and more opportunity. In order for the U.S. to compete, we need to reindustrialize the United States. And the best way of doing that is to enable opportunity. In order for the U.S. to compete, we need to reindustrialize the United States. And the best way of doing that is to enable opportunities in communities, not just Silicon Valley, but in areas like Kentucky or Ohio or Michigan. And the only way to do that is to have the capacity to actually use the internet accordingly and to be able to compete globally with China.
Well, there's a lot of issues at play here, and a lot of people have questions, but it seems to me that if you believe the United States needs to control this and needs to be the world leader in AI, we got to have the data center capacity to do it. And now you got Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez coming along trying to put a moratorium on it. This would do nothing but set us back. I mean, the Chinese aren't stopping. Do it. And now you got Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez coming along trying to put a moratorium on it. This would do nothing but set us back. I mean, the Chinese aren't stopping. They are full speed ahead on this, and I assume you would agree with that. We can't let them run this for the rest of the world. I'll give you the last word, 20 seconds.
That's exactly right. They have started the race, and we need to catch up. And the only way to do that is to build. And we need to do it across the country so that every community can participate and be part of this burgeoning economy. Thanks again for having me, Scott.
Nathan, yeah, thanks for being here. Nathan Lemur, that's the voice you've been hearing. He is the executive director of an organization called Build American AI. And we're going to track this Sanders and AOC announcement this afternoon and talk about it later this week on the show. But again, if you're tracking this stuff, I know there's a lot of information swirling, but it seems to me stopping in our tracks so that China can get ahead of us, well, that is just silly. Nathan, thanks for coming on the show. And everybody around the country, thank you for listening. We had a lot of breaking news today. We'll get into it tomorrow. We'll track this vote in the Senate on the Homeland Security, but it seemed like Democrats want to keep it shut down and keep you in misery. I hope not, but that's what we're expecting. More tomorrow. Scott's out. We'll be in Florida. See you there.
Common sense for the American people. This is the Scott Jennings Show.